Welcome to Snackable Mental Health. It's Brandon W. Hahn here. Today we have a multiple threat coming at us from the film industry. Been in the industry for decades and has a ton of work behind her. Heidi Von Palleske, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to get more people on the show that have been in some kind of industry proponent towards mental health, either in film or music or the other parts of the art world. And you, Heidi, have we met a long time ago, but I was like, you know what? Let's try and get her on the show because I think her body of work could really tell a story about how we can work it in with mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, very often when things that we don't see, we tend to ignore. And I think we do that both in literature and in film. And I think that that of course moves on into society as well. And I've always believed that if somebody had, I don't know, if they had a broken leg or they had some affliction that you could see physically, then they're treated very differently than people who have struggles mentally. And I think a lot of people are masking those things just in order to fit in. And I think there's still stigma. I remember when I was a kid growing up, they had special classes, and the special classes weren't necessarily for gifted kids. And there was a sense of, us and them, right? So you didn't want to ever be in a special class. And so it never felt to me when I was a child that it was about giving extra care or being aware. It was more about segregation. And I have to say, I was at a dinner party not that long
It's
ago.
seen
And
that way.
you see that? Do you see that or you don't see that?
Well, the segregation part of it is something I grew up with as well.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to a man who was in the art world, and he was saying about his daughter being a teacher, and that that she had to deal with kids with autism. And I thought, what did you just say? Had to deal with kids with autism, as opposed to creating an environment where we're accepting of people with all kinds of issues, right? Because there's a lot of hidden issues that we don't see, but there's also a lot of hidden issues that we don't see in ourselves. And
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, like, absolutely, for sure.
and that creates a bullying atmosphere, and I'm very very concerned about bullying atmosphere. I mean, in my novel Two White Queens and the One Eyed Jack, I deal with the idea of bullying a lot, right? And that the idea of
It's about more than wearing just pink.
what there's more to it, right? We have to stand up. I mean, it's easy to be nice, but it's harder to be kind, right? Because nice is just you put on a nice face, and but when you're kind, you make a choice to behave in a certain way. And so when you make that choice, then you also choose to be responsible for your actions. And I think that's very important.
I
And
like that you brought up nice versus kind. I mean, like, yeah, if that's part of your strategy, then it really is kind of funny. But I do my utmost to be kind to everybody, and even when I get a bad reaction from somebody, I try to be even more kind. So yeah.
I'm constantly saying to people, someone says, "Oh, that's nice of you." I always say, "I'm not nice. I am kind, but I am not nice."
That perfectly explains it. So let's jump into your work in My Animal.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Congratulations on Sundance.
Yeah, it went all over the world, and it did very well in the indie market. It played in quite a few film houses in the States, which was great. And I think it's on CBC Gem right now and Crave. But it did quite well in
And
terms.
might I add, you were the most powerful character in the movie as well. So
I
easily.
think I think it was the hardest role.
Yeah.
Because I mean she's not consistent. She turns on a dime, and
She
so.
becomes more kind and motherly after the husband dies.
Yes, and and I don't make it an obvious choice, but she's quite an alcoholic before that, and it's when the husband dies. There's a moment at the fire where I turn and I look just like really close to the camera, and what goes through my head is that that's it. Now it's only me as a parent. Now it's all up to me. I have to try harder. I have to give up the alcohol. You
And
never see her drink again after that.
and this is a character that is dealing with BPD, borderline personality disorder, for any of the listeners that are out there. And one of the big reasons I wanted to talk about it on the show is a lot of people hear the vibe of borderline personality disorder, but they don't know what it means.
And it has a really bad rap, right? I mean, other disorders are given a little bit more leeway than borderline. And I remember talking to this woman who is a friend of mine, and she's an actress, and she made this film, and she works very closely with Sacha Baron, which right? Sacha Baron is an incredible organization, and I've gone through their training program twice because what they teach you for understanding BPD also teaches you how to deal with everybody in a sense, I mean, things like you don't have to agree with someone in order to validate someone's feelings. I mean, that seems so simple, but that was a big one for me,
This
right?
is the Sasha Bear program.
Sasha Baron, yeah. So I did the Sasha Baron program, and so there's an actress there who also is a filmmaker, and she said something that was really telling to me, and that is no matter because sometimes people feel that people who are BPD might lash out, right? Well, no matter what they're feeling, whatever you're feeling in that moment, they're feeling it 10 times as much, right? So
Yes.
we have to understand that someone who has borderline, their memory and their emotions are not they're not running in a parallel in a parallel path through the brain. They're running together. So and I always put it this way. I can like remember my mom's death. I was with her when she died. And I can be really, really sad. I could talk about it right now. I could start crying, but I do not relive it. Right? I can distance myself,
Nice. Yes, absolutely. You put it in a drawer, basically, right?
and you revisit it, right? But someone with borderline personality disorder, if they think about that, they relive the day of dying over again.
Wow. Yes, absolutely.
That's how much they feel. So they are actually incredibly, they've got incredible empathy, but they also feel things so much more deeply. So we have to look at that and go, when I'm hurt, that other person might be hurt that much more. So if we go back to my animal, and when I looked at the script, when you read her lines right off the page, I mean, interestingly, she's the only one in the family who's not a werewolf.
I was just
And
going to bring that up. I was like, how could you not have a mental health condition in a family of werewolves?
right, like she's married to a werewolf. He promises her that it comes through the mother's line, that the kids aren't going to be werewolves. They all become werewolves. But it's not only that they have that in common, they all have hockey in common too, right? And
Yes, hockey was a major theme.
yeah, so they have a few things in common that she doesn't have. And when we start the film, she's making dinner and everything's fine, and the daughter changes for the first time, and the mother is attacked. She's injured and she's attacked, and she bears the scars. So she's got the scars of her daughter turning against her, and yet at the same time, she is constantly concerned about her family abandoning her. You don't see her with friends. She can't have close friends. How could she have close friends? We're going to tell your friend that you're married to a werewolf. You can't, right? So, and then she also has to take care of them all when they change. So she's got this incredible pressure on her. She always
Absolutely.
she gets through the full moon all the time, and then she overdrinks. She acts out after the drama is over. And so one of the biggest scenes, it was the first scene I was to shoot, is the scene in the um, in the hockey arena where they've all gone to the hockey game without me, and
Yes.
they're all having a great time, and the boys have just played, and my daughter's there with her new potential girlfriend, and dad's being really charming and buying them popcorn and what have you, and you look at that scene, it's a harsh scene. I mean, I swear like a trooper when I come in, right? And I got this fur coat on, and we'll talk about the fur coat in a moment. I have the fur coat on, I got mismatched boots, and I come in and I'm just like, and I thought this,
That was it. That was easily the most human scene in the movie.
because there's a moment where I say, aren't I allowed to be here? Right. And at that moment, I chose to make it like, why aren't I included? Why aren't, And I remember the actor who Billy McDonald, who was playing the concessions guy, and he just read it off the page, and we shot it the first time right out. We didn't rehearse, and when I finished, he just turned to me and went, you're breaking my heart because he wasn't expecting that. And
How ready were you for that role, for that scene? My goodness.
it was a scary scene. And they didn't tell the extras that, so they thought I was like some crazy woman who walked in off the street. They were,
Oh no, that's so funny.
you see shots of the extras and they're like, that's real. But my preparation was, because I was watching their scene go on, and my preparation was to think of what was that drive like? Like she had to have driven herself there, drunk. What was going on in her head? And what was going on in her head was not that she was angry, it was that they left me out. I don't belong. Everyone's abandoning me. No one loves me. All of those things, as opposed to playing the how dare they. I worked myself up to the state of I'm not loved. I'm abandoned. No one told me to come. And so by the time I go in there and I'm furious, it's coming from a place of pain, not from a place of fury. And that's one of the things I wanted to do with Patty was that there's always a question of like, why is she so awful right now? What's really going on underneath of everything? And one of the reviewers said that that was the most interesting thing was how the daughter and I circled each other. I mean, I have moments where I'm really maternal towards her, right? And certainly always to the boys, and then I'm really harsh on her. But if you break down that script, I'm always harsh after I've been left out somehow. I'm always harsh after someone has, done something against me. Like my husband makes jokes about how bad my cooking is. And it's like I tried, right? So she's always feeling like nothing she does is enough, and it's set at a time before people were diagnosed with borderline, right?
Or being diagnosed werewolf.
It's being diagnosed rare, and that's the other thing. That's it. And we made this choice, and it was so subtle. But you'll see that most of the time through the film, even indoors, I'm wearing a fur coat, right? I
Yes.
wear a fur coat all the time, right? When the night that they all change, and I'm sitting there, and I'm smoking, and I'm drinking, and I'm smoking, I'm worried, I'm looking at the moon, and my daughter's not back, and there's all this panic, and I'm just like there. I'm in fur coat, right? Because I'm not a werewolf, but that's the only way I could feel close to them was by trying to put on their exterior is the only way I can feel close to them. So she was a hard character because there's so many, I mean, I said to someone in the time that I shot it, I think there's maybe three scenes where there's kind of a normal scene. I'm either like crying or screaming or
There's always some kind of arc happening to you, yeah, in that movie, yeah.
it's always big. And in a sense, the film starts with with Bobby and with me at the start.
Not a real beer, by the way. It's
Okay.
not real.
This is just Diet Coke. It's not, there's no rum in it. So it starts with Bobby, me, and it ends with me letting go of her and her going off and having her life. So there really is a sense of the mother-daughter relationship and how do you deal with all of these, so we're dealing with her being a werewolf. We're dealing with her discovering her sexuality. We're dealing with the father who's the only one who really understands her dying. We're dealing with bills we can't pay. We're dealing with the sons who are about to turn into werewolves as well. So there's all kinds of things that she is dealing with, and she's dealing with those things while she's drinking, while she's not being supported for the struggles that she has. So we have a character who's not supported, who's not understood, and who's doing everything for everyone else, and not fitting in, right? So she isolates, right? And this is what we see often with someone who isn't aware of their struggles, or the people around them are not aware of their struggles. They end up isolating themselves, and it's not and very often turning inwards onto themselves. And then the borderline, a lot of the things that we see is we see self-harm, we see a higher risk of suicide, we see alcohol and drug addictions, we see, and they're all things that punish the self as opposed to punishing others, right?
Yes, annihilating yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's some of the things that I had with my character of Patty, and I learned an awful lot by going through the Sasha Baron program, and
Thanks for bringing that up again. I'm really interested in it. I would like to look more into that. I hadn't heard of it until it came from you, so I
oh,
will
you got
definitely.
these. You know what they do not charge. right?
Okay.
It's a way of understanding anyone who has emotional deregulation. And and they have programs for people who are suffering with BPD or any other type of emotion.
It's teaching you compassion, basically, right?
But more radical acceptance.
Okay.
Uh,
Radical accept. Can I write that down?
yeah. And that's why I did it twice, because the first time I couldn't do radical acceptance. I mean, I just couldn't. Right. And in radical acceptance, we have to understand that sometimes horrible things happen to us in our lives.
Absolutely.
That, so how do we accept them so that we can move on? Because when we don't accept them, we don't move on. Right. So, so my personality is that of a fighter, right? So, when there's flight or fight, I know that I tend to move towards the fight. So radical acceptance meant taking a step back from that.
Yeah, a reshaping, reframing. I was going to bring that up, and you brought me right to it. Is you've been such an instrument in reshaping and reframing how mental health is seen uh, on the page, on the screen, in your real life. What more could people like us do to erase like the stigma that's out there? Is there anything more that is required to?
I mean, I don't know. I think we have to look at our skills and what we can do. I mean, so in I did Two White Queens and One Eyed Jack came out a few years ago. Part of it's set in Coburg, and then The Lost Queen came out last week, and I have.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. But so I have a character that I never say he's OCD, but everything, points towards it. And
And how do you write OCD? How do you write that?
well, so I have an artist who, and we see him in the first book. We go from childhood till about 28, and then he's middle aged in the second book. And for instance, he does things like he's very good at visual art, and he has a teacher who wants him to do fast sketches. Like there's someone posing in class, those quick sketches, but he refuses to do that because they're not going to be perfect. And she explains to him that, well, even if you don't get a perfect mark, your mark's still going to be over 80 if you hand them in. And he said, I would rather get zero for something I don't hand in than not get something that's 100% when I know I can do better. So there's that argument all the way through, and that which he has from a child, he brings into his being very, very precise, but also the idea that if I open this envelope with this news in it right now, it's not going to be good news. But if I wait 15 minutes, so he has intrusive thoughts as well. But
Yes.
we never say he's OCD. And then we see this with his son many years later when he's born in Europe and he comes home to Coburg and visits the grandmother and she puts Fruit Loops up for him. He assumes it's a toy, so he sorts out all the colors and then demands breakfast. Right? He's 3 years old. So
Pretty cool. That's an interesting take.
yeah, so I do that. Then I have my identical twin girls who have albinism, albino twin girls, and and they are teased horribly throughout public school, just like really, really horribly, and it isn't until they sort of embrace that they're different, and they start a band that they call Bleach, and they yeah, and they embrace this. I thought it was a good name. Um, they
That's
embrace,
funny.
they figure they can out Deborah Hari, right? So, and so they come into their own by going, it doesn't matter if we're accepted, we're going to be ourselves. And but it takes the book for them to sort of accept themselves so that they can do that. And then I have a woman who is, she's raped and instead of the family dealing with that, this is the 1960s, they lock her up and she is given electroshock treatment, and she's dealing from PTSD, and because she isn't given proper treatment, she doesn't come to a very good end. And so I wanted to deal with, so I do deal with PTSD in that book. I deal with bullying and teasing, and I deal with people who feel like they're all of my characters feel like they're on the outside, right? And how do you succeed in life if you're not, part of the in crowd, So I mean, it's interesting. My book launch I had here in Toronto, and it was really well attended. I mean, like,
Yeah, I kind of it echoed on social media. I was like, yeah, this looked like a really cool place to be.
really cool. But first thing I said when I got up there, because I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed by the people who came out and supported me. And the very first thing I said was, I go, um, you know, when I was in grade school, I used to come home crying more often than not because I didn't have any friends.
Nice.
And then I said, and now I just realized it's just that I hadn't found my people yet. And then
That's a really good quote, actually.
And then I said, and then I said, later on, I re-experienced that when my daughter would come home saying, and I played with Mr. Nobody today. I didn't have any friends. And I said, and I would tell her again and again that she just hadn't found her people yet. And I think that's one thing that, we have to remind everyone who feels like they're an outsider or that they don't fit into the system, that sometimes being that, that round peg in the round hole isn't really interesting. And that, you sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to find your people. And
Late bloomers.
late bloomers. And you know what? I'm so glad I'm a late bloomer because what would I have to look forward to if I had it all when I was young?
That's right. Exactly.
So
Why
it's
wouldn't it hit us now? Why wouldn't we let it hit us now? Why not now?
why not now? Why
Like
not
it
now?
can happen. Who's to say what why like yeah, absolutely.
Right? And we
I was
keep
just gonna bring that like getting home and playing with your dolls, or for me it was G.I. Joes and wrestling figures. How does imagination combat ordinary conversation in real life, and how do you think that empowers us to be able to, I don't know, step into an archetype or have like I would much rather have fictitious conversations with friends or my people than have an ordinary conversation anymore, unless it might involve something I don't know. Like there's so much going on these days because of the smallness of the world that the internet has created. We're hearing about things, very terrible things that are going on the planet very early and very now. And I find myself on the side of imagination more than I am on the side of ordinary conversation. Do you want to?
Well, it's really funny you say that because I read a quote this morning that, and I don't have it memorized, but basically it was Einstein, and basically the idea was that imagination was more important than knowledge because knowledge is limited to what you know, but imagination is infinite. And so imagination, is filled with possibility. I can tell you this much, that when I wrote Two White Queens and One Eye Jack, and I wrote it quickly and fairly quickly for a novel, and that it did not need much for rewrites at all. It sort of seemed to come from somewhere else. But it was maybe at one of the worst periods of my life.
That's where the strength of art comes in right there. That's where muse comes in for sure.
I loved talking to my characters. I loved visiting them. I loved being with them, and I loved escaping my situation for those 3 hours a day when I would write. And so I became very, very close to them.
You blocked off 3 hours a day to finish these books of yours. Incredible discipline.
And the thing is that if you think about it, you really don't need more than that amount of time. Yes, you write for 3 hours. You are actually writing for more because you're always thinking about them, right? But 3 hours of screen time is all you really need because they do live with you the rest of the time. And I had conversations with them, and I do believe that the more you know your characters, the more you can't make a mistake when you're writing because they're not going to do something that's going to be false to them because you know them so well.
You
So,
are you are definitely creating your world and your universe, and you fall in love or even hate the characters you're creating for sure. And it's so empowering, really, to have this world of yours and to be kind of be the god of it, really, right?
and that's the thing. When you feel that your own life is out of your control, when you feel that things are happening in your life that you can't control, right? That you can't manage, because there will always be things that we can't control, beyond us. And if you can go into the world of art, whether that's writing a poem or painting a picture or having a book that you're trying to do or any of those things, especially the generative art, then then there's a place where you do have some control. And by going through the process of creating another world, somehow it gives you strength in your own world, I think. I think it does. And so, I mean, I wouldn't say that art is therapeutic, but I would definitely say that art is magic. It's like it's alchemy, right? And sometimes you
Alchemy is a good way to put it for sure.
hmm. So it has. I mean, I do Lent, right? And Lent is always writing based. It's always I'm going to write so many words a day. And I had a friend saying, "Oh, you wrote 9,000 words yesterday. Certainly, you don't have to write your 500 a day." I said, "No, it's the practice of every day. It is
That's
the
right.
it's the every day that. So it doesn't matter if I have a great day. It doesn't matter if I have a bad day. It is the practice of going about it every day, no matter what the world may throw at me during that time. There is there is a practice that is consistent, and when we start to do a few things that are consistent in our lives, it's easier to start to take control of a few other things as well. There will always be things you can't control, and there will always be tragedies, there will always be difficult times, but creation, I think that to a greater or lesser extent is something that we all desire to do. uh,
Yes.
and I mean, I just remember, when my daughter was small and I lived in Coburg, making sandcastles all the time on the beach, even knowing that the waves were going to wash them away. But the act of creating the castle was sometimes, the very thing that made the day a little bit better at the end of the day, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wicked.
Mhm.
I'm gonna step away for a second from that, which was incredible. Imagination versus or the ordinary. I'm not sure if I mentioned that I am in Toronto Film School now.
No,
Okay.
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm knee deep in Toronto Film School for writing for film and television program, the associate degree.
Great. Yeah, I have a friend that sometimes comes in as a guest teacher and teaches there, and
What's his name?
her name Valerie.
Okay,
Valerie.
I haven't run into a Valerie yet, but
And John Tench is one of the teachers for the in the acting program.
okay.
Yeah. So
So
I have.
yeah, no, I started the beginning last October. So I'm about 6 months in to the 18 months.
Yep.
I'm hoping to have a huge portfolio to dump on somebody when I've got two short films and about a third of a feature done right now.
Yay.
Pretty excited about it. And when I bring this up, I'm not bringing it up just for myself. I feel personally that the film industry is responsible for playing a big part in reshaping and reframing how we think or our perception of mental health. And Heidi, where can we go from here?
In terms of what does the film
I
industry do?
mean, like if you get like, you know, something as powerful as a beautiful mind and kind of that genre, even it could be called like the mental health genre, I would probably put of course One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Exactly that.
maybe
Yeah.
even a bit of garp in there or something like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
Dead Poet Society, a lot of Robin stuff.
Mhm.
Mr. Williams, I'll call him, really, right? But
And
like,
almost everything John Irving writes, there's something about the outsider, or there's something about mental health that's in there, right?
or there's like at least one character in there that you know that you don't know. Benny and June an amazing one. Like, where can we go from here? My I'm doing a short film in the next term about alcoholism, which I probably would agree is a mental health condition as
Oh, I
well.
think it totally is. And if you need an actress who's played drunks a lot, you could.
You know what? I would actually love that. This one is actually about a short about my father testing himself with cognac.
Wow.
But I could easily when I was 10 years old, this is what a 10-year-old would perceive after knowing about the AA program for like all of my life, doing a short about this test with cognac. But easily I could fit a woman into that role as my mom or whatever, like that.
I don't have to play your drunk dad.
No, it won't be me. It'll be a 10-year-old. Yeah.
It's true.
Um,
I don't have to.
yeah,
I mean,
but no, where can we, how much, like, where can we take this to start, like, once again, I'll bring up reframing and taking it differently. I think Snackable Mental Health Productions, Snackable Mental Health News, and the website
mhm.
are eventually going to become kind of a hub for people that have stories to tell about mental illness or mental health conditions.
You
And
know,
any ideas on where to take it?
I don't think that we have to necessarily have every film about it in order to make a difference either. What we need to do is we need to
That's
have
right.
characters that we can relate to or understand that are represented. Okay, so I mean, I'm just going to go back to the whole albino thing with my two books, right? One of the things that struck me, and one of the reasons I wrote the second book, was that I realized that um, between I think it was 1980 something and 2007, there was something like 68 films out of Hollywood that had albinos in them. Not one, not one of those films portrayed someone with albinism as a normal flesh and blood person. They all were soulless, evil, zombies, masterminds of destruction. They were all villains. There was not one hero. There was not one normal woman or normal man, getting through life with albinism. So this was what Hollywood was doing, right? It was like, oh, albinos look weird. Let's make which is awful. While there's a genocide going on in Africa against people with albinism, where they believe that people do not have
Wow.
souls, and if we take an eyeball out of somebody who has albinism, and we make a potion out of it and give it to someone with cataracts, they'll be able to see, right? So you're getting children with albinism, especially in places like Tanzania, being mutilated and for their body parts, and because there's this belief and there's a prejudice against people with albinism, and it's much more. There's a lot more people with albinism in Africa than here, um, and so I kind of looked at the fact that they were always perceived as evil or soulless or otherworldly in Hollywood, and that they weren't ever made relatable. And so one of my thoughts was to create these heroes that were like girls who just had the same wishes and dreams that any other girl might have,
Yes.
and to give that a voice. And then later on, I found out that there was a not-for-profit company out of Toronto called Under the Same Sun, and they do so much in terms of dealing with it. They go to Africa. They mostly they inform and they teach, and let people understand that someone with albinism is human. But they also, the average age is 35 because people with albinism in Africa die of skin cancer. So they deal with all of those things. So that is a company, a not-for-profit organization out of Toronto, out of Canada, that's doing this great work. And in the meantime, we're looking at a certain irresponsibility in both literary world and in the film world, where people with albinism are treated as evil. And I think that happens in a lot of other areas as well when it comes to mental health, right? How many times do we see something happen, like a school shooting, and they like to blame it on the fact that someone is, um, or they want to say that there's mental health issues, where sometimes, often,
It's just that they're
yeah,
angry.
they're angry or
I
they're,
love that you brought up responsibility, and that's where it lands with me with the industry and with the people that are making these amazing productions or writing these beautiful books
hmm,
that kind of point the finger at nothing really, just tell the story. And whether a person with albinism or whether a person with schizophrenia is seen as a threat or an antagonist,
hmm,
or like, I mean, that's been overdone. And I think like more about uh, empathy and intuitiveness towards people with a severe mental health condition should
sure,
happen, as opposed to teasing or making fun of them or pigeonholing them into a villainous role. And I'm not even just talking about film, I'm talking about documentaries as well.
exactly, yeah. You know,
Um,
I have two friends who are both actors and who are dyslexic, right? So,
which can be that for me, that can be a really comedic one. Yes, dyslexia could be very, very
but
funny.
so how do you deal with that when you've got a script and suddenly someone hands you like 8 pages that have just been rewritten and you're about to shoot them, right? Because you've got to work harder at learning those lines. You have to work harder at rooting those lines that you've learned in an emotional place, in yourself so that you can perform. So the struggle is that much more, and yet both of those friends are extraordinary actors. But they do have to work twice as hard, right? They
And
do.
that's what makes you extraordinary is what you put into even the most, even into a small role is, I mean, you can joke about it, but I mean, putting it all together and having even the extras be incredibly professional about it, for sure.
So I think that I mean, what more can we do? I think we just have to keep, like being kind. I think we have to keep talking. I think that when people say things that are just not true. I mean, for instance, this man who was talking about, that people with autism shouldn't be in classes. Well, maybe it wasn't polite and maybe it was a luncheon, but I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I
Yeah.
I
You
had to.
didn't want to handle that. Yeah.
I wasn't going to turn a blind eye and go, no, like
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
not okay. That is not okay. And because it's, the thing is it's a lesson for everyone, and that is that society has to be inclusive. Society has to be caring, and that the more we can do those things, the better the society is. And so we have to like I don't think we make the tent smaller or we segregate. I think we make the tent bigger so it includes everybody.
Absolutely. Inclusion, for, I think everybody has their own story to tell, and everybody could possibly have an individual soapbox to stand on and tell their story. And the valuable ones, you know, I would say there's probably value in some context to every story that ever gets told,
Yeah.
regardless of the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Um, yeah, like this conversation has gone so many different ways, but it's always circled back. And
Yes.
what would you, I mean, with all that we've discussed for a young Canadian actor or a blossoming screenwriter, what advice would you give for someone new to the industry, especially the ever-changing Canadian landscape of it all,
First of all,
now?
there's a huge changing landscape right now, and we have never. It's never been more important than now for us to tell our stories. In terms of the entertainment world, we definitely hitched our wagon to the American engine. So as long as the Canadian dollar was low, there's going to be things shooting here, and we would be working. Um, and that would be at the expense of us, doing our own films and our own stories. And we're seeing a big change in that right now. And maybe there won't be as much work, but I think it's an opportunity to tell our stories. And I think that on the whole, I mean, I do say that Americans are really nice. Canadians are kind, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Right? Because
That explains it for perfectly, actually.
we care, we really value a healthcare system, right? We do worry about people on the street, and we don't say, well, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, some people do, but on the whole, we don't. We are more interested in society and how, and
I think a lot of us do the best we can every day. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I think those stories that reflect that, need to be told. So to the young person, I would say, first of all, because the landscape has changed so much, and it's not only because of relationships between Canada and the U.S., and it's not only because because Marvel makes huge movies, and so there's not as much room for the smaller films. Um, but it's also because the way we watch has changed, right? Right? We're
The
streaming,
way and the way we watch it. Yeah.
just completely changed. And because of that, it's become harder and harder to get your foot in the door. Especially if you think that, that A-list actors would just do feature films before, and now they're doing the TV shows, right? So
Absolutely.
all the way down, people are sort of being, bumped down a bit, right? So I would say to the young actor that to find your own voice early on, and do not be afraid of writing your own one woman or your one man show.
Find your voice
Yeah.
early on.
Find your voice
Absolutely.
early on, and don't just wait for a job. Start to create, jobs and opportunities. And the other bit of advice, and I got this advice quite young, and I've always hung on to it. I got it from a woman named Ann Tate, who used to cast at CBC and has since become a novelist herself. And she said that in an audition class I took right, during theater school, so many years ago.
Okay.
She said, when you go into an audition, don't be, of course you're nervous, you want the job, but think of it instead of a chance to get a job. Think of it as you don't get many chances to perform. It's a chance to go in there and act. It's a chance to perform, and that changes your whole perspective. So instead of like, "What did I do wrong?" or "What do you want?" you think of it as you're walking in there with a chance to perform for someone, and that takes a lot of the worry and the pressure away from, because really your biggest job as an actor is trying to get work. So it really takes a lot of the pressure away from that auditioning that that you have to do. And so that's one thing I would say is every time you're in front of a camera, think of it as a chance to perform as opposed to a chance to try to grab a job.
Nice. Way to go. We're about to narrow down the amazing interview today, but I did read a little bit about Body in the Trunk.
Oh yeah,
Do you want
another
to help
great.
us dive into Body in the Trunk?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a thing that happened, and it's about like the whole idea of the third act. I had a moment in my 50s where I got very, very depressed. I thought my artistic life was over, and really, I didn't really know how to identify myself, right? And people thought I was crazy if I said, well, if I didn't act, I mean, no one would find me attractive if I didn't act. I would say things like that, and but I mean, what was
I'm hoping you've stopped believing that.
I'm gonna tell you what happened. I realized that I sat down and I said, what do I want to do? I want to do leads in features, and I want them to be, you know, challenging and interesting. And I want to get my books out. And it was less than a year that I got my publishing deal with the book. And but I really felt myself sort of dying inside because we are very much a youth culture. And I thought, no, I'm gonna have a third act that blazes, and I'm gonna live my most creative life. And so a few things happened. I did Bordello, and she was, Irish accent, turn of the century Western. It was a challenging role, which led to My Animal. My Animal, you saw My Animal was maybe the hardest role I've ever played. And let me tell you, every day when the cinematographer would say, "Oh my God, I didn't think you could look more ugly than yesterday, but you're pulling it off." At first, that was great, and then after a while, it was hard.
Yeah, like how do you make ugly and borderline personality disorder elegant, which is what you accomplished.
Yeah, and I mean,
You
and
made it elegant.
small. Well, thank you. My goodness, thank you. And then, the producer actually took me aside one day and said, "I didn't see the humanity in this role, and you've put so much humanity in it. So, what can I do? What can I do for you?" And I said, "You can cast me in something where I'm wearing a Chanel suit next, okay?" Uh,
Good for
And
you.
Body in the Trunk comes along, and so they have me. We did a Zoom reading just for fun, an early draft of the script, and um, and I looked at that part and I thought, oh, they're gonna cast me for this, and um, and so we read it, and then he got the money together to shoot it, and he called me and said, you have to do this, and um, and she is, I mean, she's a interesting character. She's got three sons, and she you never really know if she's lying or telling the truth. She tells her son that she can't walk, so she forces one of her sons to carry her all the time. She's a little bit trigger happy with the gun, and she believes that she has been put on earth to be the savior of every problem. And And
The patron saint of problems.
patron saint of problems, mostly with her, with her sons that she's very protective over, and probably not in a very good way. And I actually did a stunt during that time, and I swear I still feel something in my hip going on from that because we fell in this river and we went off. We went off where we were supposed to go, and I had my feet in stirrups and couldn't get my feet out of stirrups, and my hip just went as we went under the water. When it came
This really happened to you?
up, and yeah, I looked at
Okay.
the director was like, like ready to go cut, and I thought, like, don't cut. It's too good. Like it's
Yeah, it's very real. It's
too good.
hitting you very real.
Yeah, like we'll be okay somehow. He didn't think so. He thought we were dead for sure. But so it's an interesting film because all of my stuff, there's something that's sort of weirdly comedic, but like just mad about this character and bigger than life. I mean, I was sort of known as a sort of subtle actress. This character is like full blown, and so was my animal. And and I have these three sons, and and one of them has definitely he's got big problems, um, and we were just sort of, I mean it's a weird, wonderful, bizarre film, and I really think that the writer director is a bit of a genius. And again, it's one of those roles where they let me go with it, and yeah.
That's
So
perfect when you have that kind of when they give that to you and just tell you to go crazy. Like it's
I
just
tell you, I fell back in love with acting, right?
yes.
At that point, I was feeling, I mean, I would like to say that I felt that way with my animal, but it was such a challenge. We were working nights. It was Timmins. It was 40 below. All right. So it was cold, miserable, and we were shut down for 2 weeks with COVID. So we all had to stay in our rooms, right? So there's a lot of things that
So
we
you
were,
film this during COVID.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did during it's like it was just after like at the beginning of COVID, all production was shut down. So it's just the beginning of the start of production. So that caused for a lot of interesting things. For instance, you usually would block a scene and rehearse it once, and then shoot it. And so everything was done in masks, right? And the masks only came out when the cameras were on. And so you'd be looking at someone and thinking that's not what you imagined in your mind because you're seeing like the animated face below the mask
Yeah.
time, right? So that was very odd. And then the other thing that happens with actors, especially if you're playing family or if you're playing lovers or best friends, is that a lot of bonding happens over the craft table, right? Like joking and like and so the relationships you see on camera often start with that cup of coffee that you're having, well, there's none of that. There's no craft table. No one ate lunch together. You got a bag and you went back to your hotel room because it was like because of COVID.
Yeah, or in the middle of a an outbreak or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you really didn't have a sense of anyone that you were working with, right? So that said, everyone tried really hard, and that was fantastic. And I was really proud of the work. But so then the next production is Body in the Trunk, and we shot it over 2 years. So we shot a lot of it, and then the lead female got pregnant. So then we did pickup shots, a year afterwards, after the baby was born.
Wow.
Yeah, but again, we were shooting a lot of nights, um, and I had this little cottage on the property right where we were shooting, and say we finished at 5 o'clock in the morning, the stars would be all because we're in the country, and I was just allowed to go crazy, sometimes throwing my own lines, and um, and the director was just like when he was happy, you knew he was happy, which is always great for an actor to feel. And I'd
Yeah.
walk in my room tired after a night and look up at all the stars and I'd think, I am blessed.
Very cool.
I fell in love with acting again. And then the other time I felt like that was I was having an afternoon nap and I woke up and I thought how the world's changing so much, right? How everyone's afraid of AI and how people are writing letters on AI and people are trying to put novels out there with AI. And a lot of the work I've done as an actor in terms of voiceovers is now being done with AI.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh my God, I might be the last generation to have been able to spend my entire life in the arts. Maybe I didn't have quite the brilliant career that I wanted to have. Maybe I didn't win the awards I wanted, but all of a sudden I was filled with so much gratitude that I got to spend a life in the arts. How lucky am I?
Yeah, you got to play the role of Heidi Von Palleske in a life.
In life, yeah, I wasn't an extra in the story of my own life.
That's right.
That is the message for today. And that's for like
Awesome.
that's what I think is the message for everybody. Whether you feel like you're an outsider, whether you've got your struggles, whether or not there's a stigma attached to you, don't be an extra in the story of your life, right?
No, absolutely not. You get to play yourself every single day.
And play it all the way, right?
Yeah,
Be the
I'm
lead,
doing.
be the leading man in your own story.
I hear that.
Mhm.
So let's wrap.
I had so
This
much
was an
fun.
incredible, like you guided the whole show, which is amazing. And Heidi Von Palaska, you haven't just entertained us for decades. You've been a face, and people know you, and it's so amazing that we made this connection. You've helped so many people understand themselves better, and I hope you continue to do that. And and I'm hoping we can continue the conversation at some other point in time.
I hope so
Heidi
too.
Von Palaska on Snackable Mental Health, Brandon W. Hahn. Thanks so much, Heidi.
Thank you. It's been great.
Cheers.